Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
Oh my goodness, Liz.
Come on.
I know, behave yourself during this proceeding, girlfriend.
I didn't know you were on this case. Very nice.
I am a substitute for a substitute.
Gotcha. It's like, oh my goodness. I think now I have to,
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Diana.
All right. Hey, Chris and team.
Hey, Steve.
How are we doing on attendance here? Spur. Go.
I think
We have everyone we're expecting.
yes.
Good. And it's on Michelle. Okay, cool. And we have Andy, counsel for the applicant. All right. Michelle, you're good? All right, let's not waste any time. This is Zoning Board Cinco de Mayo edition. Let's begin. Good evening and welcome to the May 5th, 2021 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Stephen Spur and I'm chairman of the Summit Zoning Board. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. This meeting is being conducted virtually via video conferencing in lieu of meeting in this council chamber of Summit City Hall, Summit, New Jersey. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page. In addition, members of the public can view and participate in the meeting by following the link provided on the agenda. Members of the public may also submit written comments and questions to the zoning board secretary in advance of the meeting to be read aloud during the meeting. Such written comments shall not be considered testimonial and shall not be considered by the board in its determination on any application. Individuals wishing to provide testimony as to any application must participate virtually with both audio and video enabled. Andy Ball is the zoning board secretary or zoning board's attorney. He will advise the board members on matters of law and is the key interface with an applicant's attorney. Mr. Ball does not vote on the applications. Chris Nicola is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. Mr. Nicola works with the applicants on getting their applications together, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Mr. Nicola also does not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Some applications require 5 affirmative votes to be approved. You'll be told which majority will be required before we begin our deliberations. Mr. Nicola, will you please call the roll of the members?
Sure. Chairman Spur,
Here?
Vice Chairwoman Newell.
Here.
Mr. Yuko,
Here.
Mr. Steiner is excused. Mr. Mullen,
Here.
Ms. Schwartzstein is excused. Mr. Millet,
Here.
Mr. Woikitz is excused. Ms. Toth,
Here.
Ms. Sager,
Here.
and Dr. Levine is excused. You have a quorum. You can proceed.
Okay. We generally hear the cases in the order they are listed on the agenda. We try to have each hearing last no more than 30 minutes, but we do understand that some cases are too complex to be heard in that time frame. Each hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required. We then hear from any expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals are done with their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think about this case. That opportunity comes at the end of the hearing. Before you ask your questions, we need to know who you are and where you live. It is important that our court reporter be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. Please state your name before speaking or asking a question. And please do not talk over each other. This is even more important under the current circumstances. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak. And at that time, you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed and we go into executive session, where the board members discuss the case and vote. You'll be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. Most applications are heard and decided in the same evening. If a case requires additional information or testimony that cannot be presented tonight, we will carry your case to another date, and it will not be decided tonight. Krista Anderson, the city's zoning officer, has asked that I remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to the conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as it will cause extra work for city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. When I call your name, please tell me how many witnesses you have and whether you think you can complete your case within 30 minutes. I certainly hope we can do this in 30 minutes, but let's see. The only application on the agenda for this evening is Morris Habitat for Humanity, 146 Morris Avenue. May I ask who's our attorney this evening for that case?
Oh,
Any
Michael,
takers?
Michael, you're on mute.
So, Mr. Chairman, my name is Michael Mullen. I'm a partner at Skank Price Smith & King. Our law firm represents Habitat for Humanity, which is the applicant for tonight's presentation. I have one witness. As the board knows, this is in many ways a continuation of something that started, that the board handled. There was litigation that ensued. That litigation has been resolved, and that as a result, for the most part, we anticipate that tonight's testimony to be offered will deal mostly with any changes to the application which arose out of the settlement itself. I would hope that we could move quickly. We're prepared to move quickly. I will confess that this is my first dance with this particular application, that I am substituting for Sean Monahan, who had worked with the board before. And I'm further substituting for Sean's associate, whose wife has the audacity of deciding to give birth to their twins, their first 2 children, this evening. Andrew, I haven't had a chance to work with you before. I look forward to doing it. I will say one thing just to clarify the record. As much as I studied this file very, very well, I missed the fact that a wonderful person in Summit Circles, Liz Newell, is your vice chair. I know Liz as a result of my interactions with Atlantic Health and other people, and short of maybe putting the pressure on Liz at a later date to buy me a milkshake at the Magic Fountain down the street from her house, I have not had occasion to represent Liz or her family in any legal matters, nor has our law firm.
Oh, I heard a promise of a milkshake. We won't hold that against you, but
I hope not.
nonetheless. But before we jump into the application, Mr. Mullen, maybe just for the benefit of the board, I'll offer our board attorney, Mr. Ball, just a brief moment to summarize some of the points that he shared, just again to set some context for what we hope to accomplish tonight. Mr. Ball, it's on you.
Certainly. And I know Mr. Mullen started to go through some of the history a bit. And everything he noted is correct. And I'd just like to also take a quick minute to give a summary, both for the benefit of the members of the public that are listening tonight and so that the record is clear. As noted, the board previously heard Morris Habitat's application. It was for minor subdivision, preliminary and major site plan approval, and variances associated with the construction of 12 affordable homes on the property in question. The board did indeed approve that application, and that was back in June of 2019. And then the board subsequently adopted a resolution memorializing that decision in July 2019. During the course of those hearings, I think there were 6 in total, there were a number of objectors who did put on a case opposing the application. After the application was approved, those objectors did file litigation in about September of 2019. Seeking to invalidate the board's decision. About a year later, in October 2020, all the parties in that litigation agreed to settle the matter, agreed upon the scope of the amended plans that would be submitted to the board, and then Morris Habitat did indeed bring this application tonight, seeking modification of its approval in order to conform the project with those amended plans. As Mr. Mullen noted, since the prior approval does remain in place, the board won't be hearing a full, entirely new application tonight. Instead, I imagine the applicants are going to be focusing on the key amendments to the plans, the amended variance relief associated with those amendments, and then what the end result of the application would look like. So that's basically all I wanted to note, unless any board members have particular questions for me, or unless Mr. Mullen would like to add any additional points to the history, I would propose turning it over to him to proceed at this point.
I have no additions to the history. Thanks, Andrew.
Certainly.
All right, Mr. Mullen, the floor is yours. Lead us through the case, and we'll chime in with questions as you proceed.
Okay, terrific. And we encourage questions. Again, we're not just about good intentions, we're also about good planning and good engineering. With that, I'd like to call Fred Stewart as our primary witness. Now, I believe that Mr. Stewart has testified in the earlier proceedings. Andrew, if you want to have Mr. Stewart re-sworn and requalified, we're happy to do that. Otherwise, he understands the rules and regulations that were imposed on him by virtue of his prior testimony.
I think just for the benefit that it's been over a year since the last time he testified, I would like to just swear him in one more time and get that on the record. So I see you're raising your right hand. If you would, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Fred Stewart, S-T-E-W-A-R-T, professional engineer and land surveyor.
Thank you. And would you just briefly give your background, experience, and then 3 boards you've appeared before aside from Summit?
3 boards I appeared before besides Summit would be Rockaway Township, Rockaway Borough, Roxbury Township. I've been in my own business since the year 2000, been in the field of surveying and engineering since 1986. Received my professional engineer's license in 1999 for the state of New Jersey. Received my surveyor's license in 1992 from the state of New Jersey. Graduated from NJIT with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering in 1996. And graduated from County College of Morris with a surveying certificate in 1986.
Thank you. I'm guessing that covers it. And unless there's any questions from the board, I believe they would like to accept your qualifications as a professional engineer at this time.
We will. We'll accept your credentials and let you proceed.
Thank you.
Fred, were you involved in the initial application with respect to this project?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And in the context of the settlement that arose, what can you identify, just generally at first, the major changes involving the project itself?
Okay, if I may share my screen.
Go right ahead.
Okay. This will be the layout plan, which has a revision date of March 23rd, 2021, which should be the plans that the board did receive. And I will zoom in slightly on here. As you know, Ashwood Court is to the right of the page. Morris Ave is up in the upper left-hand corner of the page. And the access drive formerly came from Ashwood Court off the cul-de-sac in this area here, within the right-of-way onto our property. The major change here was the relocation of that access drive from Morris Ave in this location here. We do have a stem of property goes out to Morris Ave, as you all know. And within that stem, we did place an access drive that starts off as a 26-foot wide concrete apron, goes to a 23-foot wide access drive, and proceeds onto the property to our parking area located between the two buildings, which basically the parking area remains pretty much the same as what it was previously. Now, within that access area that goes out to Morris Ave, we have relocated the water main, which comes in from Morris Ave, the larger main of the two that's available to us. That's a 10-inch main out there. We did relocate the water main or water service to come from there onto the site, proceed on the site to a proposed fire hydrant, which is located near the corner of the property, and proceeding to service the two buildings. The former location was from Ashwood Court, from a water main on Ashwood Court, but that water main is slightly smaller than one out in Morris Ave. So we are in discussions with New Jersey American Water, and I do believe that we will be coming in from Morris Ave with that water main. And that's where it stands as of now. As I'm in this area, I'll go over the sewer system. That previously was coming from Ashwood Court, or from our property to Ashwood Court, along with the drainage system within the right-of-way of Ashwood Court, which is this line, dark line here, which terminated at our property right at this point. We are still proposing to go to Ashwood Court with the drainage and the sewer, but those lines were relocated to a proposed easement, which will be to north of the right-of-way, which is this hatched area, which is on lot 13. They are granting us an easement to place those utilities within that area that will go out to Ashwood Court. Now, from Ashwood Court, we are also proposing a 4-foot wide concrete walk to be located within the right-of-way as per the settlement agreement in this section here, which will then come up to the property line and go through a gated access onto the property to continue on to the various walkways on our site.
Now, Fred, that is a private pedestrian walk. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's proposed to be a private walkway.
Okay. I'm sorry to have cut you off. Okay.
That's okay.
So in addition to the relocation of the sewer and the installation of the private walkway, what other, as well as the new entranceway off of Morris, what other changes have occurred with respect to the plan, if you will, for this project?
Okay. Now, in accessing from Morris Ave, that opens up the opportunity to add some additional parking, which we did. Formerly, we had 27 parking stalls. We are now proposing 35 parking stalls. And we were we added some additional stalls in this section right here off the access drive, a right-hand turn off the access drive. That did increase our impervious coverage, of course. We were formerly with the prior approval at 58.2%. We went to 59.9%. Required impervious coverage at 60%, so we do meet the zoning criteria for that. We also relocated our monument sign, which was formerly near the termination of Ashwood Court over in this area here. We relocated that monument sign to be, of course, near Morris Ave, near our entrance, right here. We did note that it's 5 feet off the right-of-way line. We believe that the ordinance does call for that to be 10 feet off the right-of-way line, which we will verify that. I know that's within one of your professional, or one or two of your professionals' reports. So we will be bringing that into compliance if need be, to bring that to 10 feet off the right-of-way line.
So the plan there, Fred, is just to coordinate with the summit officials as to whether it's 5 feet or 10 feet, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, also, another change would be to the lighting, which now I'll go to our lighting plan. Of course, extending the access drive out to Morris Ave, we will have to provide some additional lighting. And of course, extending the parking area to parking stalls, again, you have to extend the lighting. Basically, we had the 4 original light fixtures located within the parking area. We added an additional light fixture to illuminate part of the access drive and the parking stalls right off of the access drive. There is a light fixture located across the street, directly across the street from our access point on Morris Ave, which is on that utility pole right there that I'm pointing to now. So that will illuminate the entranceway in this area. So there will be sufficient lighting. And I did note that there were some comments on that. Since I'm on the lighting, I might as well proceed with those comments.
Go right ahead.
Okay. We did note that the light fixture post was at 16 feet that we were proposing. Your requirement is at 15 feet, and we'll gladly comply with that. There's also the intensities. There's 2 conflicting things there. One of your professionals said 3,500 K, another one said 4,000 K. Again, we'll verify which one's correct, and we will comply with that as well. There is some lighting that is, I would say, over lighting near this boundary line in here. We will provide a back shield on this fixture to protect the overflow from going on to lot 2, which is the adjacent property. So the back shield should protect that from having any additional lighting going on to that property. There's also another comment about the lighting near the trash enclosure that has been relocated to the rear of the parking area, right in this section here. Again, we'll increase the lighting in that area to comply with the ordinance.
Fred, are there any other changes with respect to the trash enclosure area as a result of the settlement?
Yes, there was. There's one more note about the lighting. One of the professionals would like us to show the building lighting, which is basically residential in nature. They're typical coach lights with maybe a 60 or an 80 watt bulb within those light fixtures. Of course, near the doorways. That's what we're proposing on the buildings. Also within the stairwell that goes down into the basement, as you all know, we had a stairwell access on the exterior. That will be lit as well. Those will be on motion detectors if need be. So if somebody approaches the doorway, of course, they'll go on. But we will provide those on the lighting plan as well. So we expect to revise the lighting plan based on those minor changes I just stated.
Okay.
Now back to the trash enclosure. Yes, that was relocated as well. Formerly, we had those to the rear of the parking area, which was actually near the Morris Ave side of the property, near the stem anyway, in this area over here. We did relocate the trash enclosure to the rear of the parking area, as normally it would be, which is in this section here. And we did combine them basically from being 2 separate trash enclosures, one on either side of the parking, to one full trash enclosure located, I'll call that near the turnaround of the parking. This way it's easy accessible for a trash truck to come and grab the garbage cans. That is noted to be, I'll go back to my layout plan. Just right in this section here. Noted to be 7.7 feet off the rear property line or the right-of-way line of Ashwood Court, soon to be the rear property line. Required supposed to be at 12 feet. Due to the site configuration, we placed at 7.7, but we did provide some screening, additional screening to protect the view of the trash enclosure. We do have, or let me back up a little bit. Formerly, we had a 6-foot stockade fence running along the boundary line up to the former access point. We will extend that stockade fence across the right-of-way line of Ashwood Court, or I'm sorry, across the boundary line of Ashwood Court to the other side where we proposed the fence previously as well. That'll screen the trash enclosure. And going to the landscape plan, back up on here, but there we go. We do have some additional screening with vegetation, 2 trees on either side of the trash enclosure at the end of the parking area, some shrubs across the backside of the trash enclosure as well, between the fence and the trash enclosure, and just some small plantings along the walkway. And then, of course, on the north side of the trash enclosure as well, some other small plantings to better screen the trash enclosure itself. The trash enclosure will be a block, out of block construction, and will be 6 feet high.
So, Fred, in terms of the trash enclosure, are you convinced that there is adequate screening so as to take care of any concerns which might arise from the next door neighbors?
Yes, I believe there is.
Okay. Any other changes with respect to the plan, if you will, with respect to the project?
No, I believe I covered all the changes.
Okay. Fred, did you have occasion to see the, in terms of the professional reports submitted by the city, did you have occasion to see the report of the fire chief?
Yes, I did.
Okay. If you can, could you take a look at that? And I'll ask you a couple of quick questions with respect to the same. I think
Okay.
because we're dealing with some safety issues, it's important that the board, that we at least try to educate the board as to what our understanding of the concerns are. Let me know when you've got the document and I'll ask you a couple of questions about it.
Sure, I have it right now.
Okay, when the chief talks about directory signage, what does that mean, if you know?
I believe that would be basically building numbers, which we will gladly place on the building. Typically, we would put them on the side facing the access drive, which would be one building number over here and one over here, as far as the building numbers go. As far as unit numbers, of course, unit numbers will be on the doorways.
On the doorways.
Yeah.
And with respect to the chief's notation as to a Knox box, that's KNOX box for each building. What do you understand that to be?
That's a box to allow access into the buildings. I believe they have keys within it. The firemen have a key to access that box. So yeah, we'll provide the Knox box.
And then the third comment that the chief made in terms of the marking of the entry driveway. Is that a comment that is understood well by the applicant and that the applicant stands prepared to pursue the same?
Yes, yes, sorry.
Okay. All right. Let's next go to, just give me 2 seconds.
There's one more on there.
Yeah, you could, I think it's more of an observation, but yes, Fred, if you can, talk about the notion of the proposed fire hydrant.
Yeah, we will provide that prior to any combustible building materials being brought to the construction site. That's not a problem. We'll do that as well.
Okay. Fred, if you can, I'll direct your attention to the Collier's engineering report. And in particular, I'm going to ask you for a couple of comments on page 2 of the report, or actually page 3 of the report under beginning with items number 9 and 10. When you found that, let me know and I'll ask you the questions.
Yes, I found it.
Now, there is a comment in the engineering report as to the sidewalk access. What's your understanding as to that particular comment?
This is on number 9.
Number 8, rather, I apologize.
I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's basically the sidewalk we show is within the right-of-way area, and that's per the settlement agreement. If and when the area of that right-of-way is ever developed in the future, that's when the sidewalk would be relocated into one of the easements.
Okay. And does it follow that number 9 speaks of a related issue?
Yes, it speaks of the right-of-way area. If it's vacated, there is a guy wire within that area for the existing utility pole. It's an existing guy wire that's holding the utility pole. Again, that would have to be relocated at time of construction or future development of that Ashwood Court right-of-way area.
And Fred, if you
Sorry,
can, I'll direct your attention to point 11 of the report pertaining to the retaining wall. And what's the upshot in terms of this particular comment and the applicant's view of the same? Again, I'm directing your attention to number 11.
Yes, that's regarding the retaining wall that's running along the property line or common property line of our property, lot 14 to the south and lot 13 to the north, and of course within the right-of-way line or right-of-way area of Ashwood Court. That's an existing retaining wall. It is a hybrid wall on lot 13. I believe it's a modular block wall that extends down into the right-of-way of Ashwood Court and then picks up with an older concrete wall or concrete block wall that extends down into lot 14. Now, in doing the construction for our project, we will be basically disturbing that wall within the area of the Ashwood Court right-of-way and within the area of the proposed easement that's located on lot 13. The disturbance is due to the extension or the connection of the drainage and the sewer lines into Ashwood Court, right in this section here. And the further disturbance is coming down within the Ashwood Court right away to a point about 8 to 10 feet from the boundary line of lot 14, right in this section here. And that's that black line that you see right in this area. That's the area of wall that we are going to disturb. What we intend to do after we disturb it is basically the wall will be buried underneath the proposed grade. And I will go to our grading plan. And what we are proposing is to fill that area in and basically slope it downward and eliminate the portion of that wall within the Ashwood Court right away and a small portion of lot 13.
Okay, thank you. Fred, I'm going to direct since we were talking about parking earlier, I'm going to direct you to comment 22. And I guess what I'm really looking for is just a reaction. Apparently people are preferring a hairpin striping of the parking lot.
That's correct. We'll provide hairpin striping. I do have 2 details, one showing hairpin, one showing normal striping. We'll remove the normal striping from the detail sheet.
Okay. There was also a question asked as to the parking lot, which you described as adding additional space. Does the adding of additional space in any way imperil any ADA compliance issues?
No, it doesn't. We're fully compliant with the ADA standards. I know the question was if we feel a need for additional handicap accessible stalls. We do not.
Okay. And Fred, in your professional opinion, you're aware that as a result of this application and the settlement, really, that it's necessary for Habitat for Humanity to seek out certain variances. With respect to the variances as a whole that are being sought, do they in any way threaten or undermine the existing zoning scheme for the city of Summit?
In my opinion, no.
And do the request for these relief from the ordinances in any way impair safety or health concerns at the subject site?
No, does not impair any safety or health concerns.
Okay. Bear with me, board. I think we're getting to a good spot. And Fred, some of the need for variances are just as a result of the geography of the site. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
In terms
The
of
shape and topography of the site.
right. And the applicant, with respect to your work on this project, it's your opinion, is it not, that the applicant is committed to adequate landscaping throughout the project, not just along the border with the Ashwood Court properties?
Yes, our landscaping plan, I believe, is sufficient. We did a pretty decent job with it, I believe.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe that I have any further questions for Mr. Stewart. I certainly encourage you to ask any questions which you might have, but I believe he's gone over the salient points with respect to the differences or the issues that have arose as a result of the settlement. It's awkward because you guys lived through 6 sessions of testimony in terms of all the gory details of this project. But at the end of the day, as a result of the settlement, the substantive changes to the project are rather limited. But the applicant is here and ready to answer any questions which you might have.
It was our pleasure to spend those 6 sessions on
I'm
this
sure it
subject,
was.
so much so we wanted one more. But just let's give our board professionals the opportunity to chime in. Mr. Dower, is there anything further you'd like to highlight from the engineer's letter? Or further
Just
questions?
2 items. One was the 10 parking spaces, approximately 10 parking spaces that are deficient in length or depth as you drive into the site. I know Krista mentioned that as well. And the question would be if you could narrow the sidewalk from 6 feet to 4 feet to make them more compliant.
Fred, what's your reaction to that particular suggestion that had been discussed in the past? Where did you?
Yeah, there is that possibility, and those approximately 10 spaces, I believe they are, yes. They're at 16 foot in depth. But I do, from what I understand, within your ordinance, that's allowable to decrease a stall by 2 feet from the 18 standard that you have. But I also do provide a 6 foot wide walkway, which does allow for the overhang of a car by 2 feet into that walkway, which still allows a 4 foot pedestrian area for walking. We could slender down the sidewalk, provide the additional length, but that would just have a 4 foot wide sidewalk then.
I think the sidewalk as you enter the site is 4 feet.
Yes.
And I think both Chris and I commented that if that could be done to narrow that down to 4 feet along that stretch.
Okay, we could do that.
Okay, and the only other question I had, you answered the question about the ADA spaces. Again, that was deferring to Habitat if they had history as to the need for additional spaces, even though it was compliant. As you noted that they don't think that's necessary, and that's fine. Then the only major item would be relocating the seepage pits for ease of maintenance to under the parking lot. between the buildings.
Oh, yeah, I understand the comment, but with that said, I do believe that we would prefer to keep them in their current location. Because the minute we put them underneath the parking area, that means they have to be traffic rated structures. And it does cause a possible hazard as well. I would prefer leaving them in their current location. And not only does the traffic on top of the drywalls possibly cause a safety issue, it's also a much more expensive unit than the ones that we place within the lawn area.
Okay, we thought from an ease of maintenance standpoint that because to try to maintain them in the backyard where it's not really that accessible versus having them in the driveway would be more beneficial for the property owners
Hmm.
Yeah.
and the HOA as well.
I can understand that to a point, but then again, you're weighing basically the maintenance issue compared to a cost and safety issue within the parking area.
And I don't mean to interject, but I do believe that this is one of the issues that might have been decided during the course of the initial hearings on this matter. I don't mean it in any way, shape, or form to foreclose discussion about it, but I was under the impression that this was an issue that was the subject of some back and forth in the initial application. I could be wrong. I just throw that out there.
Yeah, there was some discussion. I don't know if it was ever, obviously the plans were not changed, but we'll defer to Mr. Stewart if he wants to maintain them at that location.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. We appreciate that.
Okay. I would prefer to maintain the location where they currently are within the yard areas.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, no further questions.
Okay. Mr. Snickes, anything you'd like to add at this point?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to review a few things real quickly with the engineer. The density variance that's proposed, it actually improves, correct, from the prior application?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and it's now 13.32 compared to 13.25 as permitted by ordinance, which is rather
Correct.
small and inconsequential numeric difference.
Yes.
The access off of Morris, it's now not gaining access from Ashwood Court. Do you agree that there's a variance necessary for that? And is that part of your application as well?
Yes, I would agree there's a variance for that because it was stated within your overlay that there was to be access from Ashwood Court, but now we're coming in off of Morris Ave, so therefore it would be a variance.
Okay, I just want to clarify that for the record. You talked about the air conditioners and the dumpster enclosure. The lighting levels, you had indicated that you'll put backside shields on the fixtures. You don't need any relief then from the lighting levels?
At this point, I don't think so. I believe that if we put a back shield on that one along lot 2, that should be sufficient.
Okay.
But, there's always that minute detail where we can't get it down to below 0.1 at the property line.
But yet you'll stipulate that you'll add the backside shield to minimize this as much as possible.
That's correct. And there is some brush along that line, trees and brush along that boundary where the light is in the backyard area of that property. So that'll help screen any overflow that might occur after the back shield.
Okay. The maximum fixture height you fixed, you're changing to 15. The maximum light intensity as far as the illumination values, we'll discuss that, whether it's 3,500 or 4,000. But yet you don't need any deviation from the standards. The minimum sign setback, you are making it 10 feet. We had noted in our design matrix that it calls for multifamily structures at 10 feet off the right-of-way line. So
Okay.
you're going to make it 10 feet?
Yes, 10 feet.
Okay, thank you. And then there's a fence height in the front yard because of the nuance relative to Ashwood Court. You're putting the new fence in at 6 foot high. So that also needs a fence variance.
That's correct.
Okay. And I would offer to the board that I believe the prior testimony addressed the relative criteria, variance criteria relative to the types of variances. And remember that there is an inherently beneficial use aspect to the application. And that inherently beneficial use addresses the positive criteria for the density as well as the C variances that are being proposed. So I'd offer that, and if there's any further questions of myself, I'll leave that for the board. But no further questions of this witness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snakis. Just a question for Mr. Ball then. Some of the discussion we've had here about, for example, the shielding of the lights, the 10-foot signage, are these conditions on the resolution that we're noting?
As part of the resolution, they're bound by all the testimony that's presented in the hearing. So I don't see a need to impose them as particular conditions. They've already agreed to amend the plans and to construct it accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of the board of this witness?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I think it's all been addressed, but I just want to be 100% sure. I think I heard the applicant and Mr. Sekis with an exchange that the sign will be put in a conforming location. That's correct. It will not be 5 feet, it will be 10 feet. Is that correct, applicant?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the lighting, it sounds like you're agreeing that you'll conform with all the lighting requirements. I heard a little squishy language from Mr. Stewart about, well, we might not get quite to 0.1. I mean, you know, is the applicant committing that the lighting will conform with what the ordinance is?
We're going to try in that location. It's going to be a little difficult. I don't have it in front of me just yet, but it will be a little difficult along that boundary line with lot 2, and because of the proximity of the light fixture. The problem is it's a very, I'll say very narrow. It is narrow in that location, and we already have our access drive being at 23 feet, and we are somewhat constricted. But I do believe the back shield will help. We may be near 0.1 at the boundary, but I can't really guarantee that we're going to be at exactly 0.1. We might be a little bit higher in that area.
So are we being asked to approve? Are we being asked to approve a just in case variance, or what is the applicant asking for?
That's correct. I would say just in case we're slightly above, a reasonable amount above. I mean, right now we're currently showing about 0.6 right over the property line. I would say we're probably get that to be about a 0.1 level, and then that'd be it with the back shield. But yeah, there might be some variation from your ordinance right in that location along lot 2, which is behind their garage area, just so you know. It's not really near their home.
Okay. And the only other question I had is that I don't think this was mentioned. The zoning officer, again, it's not a requirement, it's not a variance, but the zoning officer made, I think, a very good suggestion about considering bike racks. And I don't know if that's something the applicant would consider. I think it'd be a very nice feature for the property.
Oh, I did talk to the applicant about that, and the discussion went about there is a storage area in the basement for each one of the units, and we believe that's where they could store their bicycles.
Okay, but what about visitors potentially, or no, you wouldn't want to provide for possibly visitors, or?
That is a possibility. If you just give me 1 second. I will check with the applicant if that's a reasonable request.
While we're looking into that, Andy, just to clarify back to Tom's point about lighting, in the prior resolution that was approved by the board, one of the conditions was the submission of a lighting plan for approval by the board engineer. That condition still stands. That's correct?
Yes, all the conditions previously noted, unless they're particularly amended by a new resolution of approval, would stand.
So that Tom gave me a little, feeling a little bit better about the lighting, knowing that it would be scrutinized by the board engineer.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Just back to bike racks.
Sure, about the bike rack. Sure, we can provide a bike rack somewhere on the site for visitors. Actually, I didn't even consider a visitor on the bike, but that was a great suggestion.
Well, it seems like there'll be families with kids and they'll have friends come over. So
Mhm.
I think it's a good idea.
It is.
That's all I have. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yuko. Any other questions from members of the board for this particular witness?
I do have,
Quickly about the mail delivery. Krista mentioned that considering talking to the postmaster about mailboxes.
Oh, as far as the mailboxes, in a previous project we had in Summit, I know they were door to door. The mailboxes were on each door. But from what I understand from what she has said within her letter or memo, is that there's a possibility it might be just one mailbox bank per se within a certain location. That's what we're going to have to discuss with the postmaster and have them decide on that. But if we were to place a mailbox on site, I don't know if you recall earlier, I showed you a location of the fire hydrant near the corner of the property, right before it widens out when you get into the main area, the parking area. That's probably where we would place a large mailbox for the units.
And Fred, it's fair to say that whatever the postal official tells us to do, we will in fact do, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Newell?
Good, thank you.
All right.
There
Yep,
was-
Ms. Sager, you're up. Go for it.
There was some conversation about changing the striping of the parking spaces. Can you explain that a little bit further?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The striping of the parking spaces?
Yeah, currently I show them as a solid stripe. Your ordinance calls us to require to have a hairpin stripe for the parking stall.
Can you explain what that means?
It's a double stripe,
Ah, okay.
okay?
Does that take away space from each space at all? Do you have
No,
to
it
change
does.
the spacing? Okay,
No, we measure from center to center on the stripes.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from members of the board?
I have a
All right.
question.
Just one sec. Just want to make sure the board has exhausted their questions.
Okay.
All right. Yep. And sorry. Thanks, Ms. Jacobs. Could you hop on video? Just a requirement of these meetings that we need you on video and audio to testify.
Yeah,
to ask
but my camera doesn't work, and I'm on my laptop. I'm sorry.
Steve, it's actually okay for questions as long as they're not
Okay.
providing testimony. They don't have to show up for video.
All right. You got to buy this time. Anyways, Ms. Jacobs, if you could just tell us your name and your address, and then you can ask your question.
Okay, my name is Stephanie Jacobs, and I live on Mars Avenue. And I may have missed these meetings because I work in healthcare. So, but thank goodness I was here. I got the letter in the mail. So and I may have missed this, but I know for a fact there's an issue, and they were skimmed over about drainage in Ashwood. Nothing was said about Morris Avenue, and there's a drainage issue on Morris Avenue because I know my house and additionally two other, they don't even, one lives close to me and the other one lives far away, had issues with drainage, and we all had to add new drainage to our basement off of Morris Avenue. Is there anything, or is there anything being done in terms of drainage coming off of Morris Avenue, or that wasn't in consideration?
I'm not sure that I don't mean to in any way, shape or form dodge the question, but I'm not sure that that's really a question unique to this particular project. I think to the extent that you or any of the neighbors have an experience that you think might impact upon drainage issues associated with this project, we're happy to listen to that. But I don't think you're quite saying that the drainage problems that you and your neighbors have experienced are necessarily relating to this particular property. And it would appear, Fred is the better person to answer the question. It would appear that that this particular project, as well engineered and designed as it would be, it should not add to any existing drainage woes along Morris Avenue. Fred, right, there's not a particular hyper intensity that's going to arise from the project, right?
That's correct. In fact, the topography of the site slopes from Morris Ave towards Ashwood Court. So we are not providing any additional runoff towards Morris Ave. In fact, we're directing it all towards Ashwood Court as it does now.
Okay. So ma'am, I'm not sure whether that totally answers your question or not, but we're trying to kind of figure out where you're coming from and try to address the question as best as possible.
I would note as well, Mr. Mullen, within the prior resolution, there was a condition where the board was retaining drainage jurisdiction for a period of 4 years from
At least
the
4
issuance of.
years. Yeah, that's right.
So, and Ms. Jacobs, that means that we'll continue to, of course, monitor, drainage on the property. If you as a neighboring property, or really anyone from the interested public, observes a condition where the construction has worsened the drainage condition on that property and the surrounding areas, it would be a matter for the board to revisit and for the applicant to readdress.
Okay.
Any other questions from members of the public for this witness?
I have a question.
Ms. Powers. Yeah, Ms. Powers.
I'm Barbara Powers. I live at 18 Henry Street, so I'm on the other side of the train embankment, and I'm late to the process here. Does there exist that you could see any kind of drawing that shows the height of the building? I know it's 2 stories, but does there exist a drawing that shows whether it goes above the train? I'm not going to say anything. I'm just more out of curiosity. Is there a site plan that shows the height of the property, or how far above the train tracks will the second story rise? Does that information exist? That's one question. My second question is, has there been any interfacing with the Parkline Summit organization, since it abuts the property, about what kind of impact there may or may not be with screening from them, looking into the homes that would abut the Parkline Summit? Those are my 2 questions.
Okay. As far as the Parkline Summit, I believe maybe Michael, you could help me with this one. They would have been noticed about this project in the past. Okay.
It certainly would have, not just in terms of this particular application, but the application that predated it.
Sure.
So,
yeah. So they've had no outreach to you?
I'm not aware of any outreach directed to the applicant.
Okay.
I did see, in trying to study very quickly, something that was relatively new to me that I thought I saw in one of the reports, and maybe Fred, you'll remember. I think that there was some notation that the height of the building itself was approximately 28 feet, but I wouldn't be able to answer your question in terms of how 28 feet compares or contrasts with the railroad height.
Right. Do you know the height of the current building? Do you know how much taller it is than the existing building?
I do not know that, ma'am.
Yeah.
I know the current building is at 2 stories, and the height of the proposed building by ordinance definition is at 28.97 feet. As far as the railroad goes, in the vicinity of the building, I don't have the exact height in that area that I could tell you. But I know the berm is pretty high.
Yeah.
It is a good 15 to 20 foot high
Oh,
berm.
no.
Yeah.
But so relative to the existing building, it's a touch higher, but it's not double what's there.
No, it's not double. They're both 2-story buildings.
Yeah, that's fine. Good. Thank you. Those are good answers. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Powers. Any other questions from members of the public for this witness? I'm looking and seeing none. Okay. That, I believe, Mr. Mullen, was your only witness for this evening's hearing.
That is correct. The only other thing I would add, just to make you feel even better or stronger in terms of the bike rack issue, is, as you know, it's required that the applicant agree to certain conditions. But also in the context of a condominium association that will ultimately be involved in this project, the applicant will take steps to make sure that the bike rack option is memorialized within the condominiums association's rules and regulations also.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Great. Anything else you'd like to add before we'll just open, of course, the hearing for public comment? Anything further you'd like to add, Mr. Mullen?
No, I don't have anything to add, other than when people are ready for us to close, but we have no other comments or no other witnesses.
All right.
And we are
Let's-
sensitive to your time.
I have one more quick question, if I
Go ahead,
may.
Ms. Sager. Yep.
You may have mentioned it before. Is there a stop sign when people leave the driveway to re-enter Morris Ave?
Yes, there is.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. We'll open then the hearing for public comment. So this is your opportunity to share whether you are in favor or in opposition, really any commentary to tonight's amended application, which is relatively limited in scope, but we still welcome you to raise your hand. You'll need to state your name, your address, and our attorney, Mr. Ball, will swear you in to provide any testimony. Any public comment in favor or in opposition to, again, the relatively narrow amended application we're hearing tonight? Looking and I don't see any. Reverend Harriel, do you want to speak briefly?
Yes, good evening. I just wanted to go on record saying that I'm glad that.
Please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Do you
Sure.
swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Dennison D. Harriel Jr., Harrield.
Thank you. You may proceed.
I just want to state how pleased I am that this has come to this meeting, and I'm enthusiastically in favor of this going forward and being approved.
Thank you, Reverend. All right, any other public comments? Reverend Yarborough, I think I see your hand raised. Yep.
Yes, I'm Reverend Julie Yarborough from Christ Church.
And if you two could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And just please spell your last name.
Yarboroughh.
Thank you.
I'm associate pastor at Christ Church, and I would just like to echo what Reverend Harriel said. We are delighted that Habitat is building 12 more units in Summit, and we're thrilled that it's going before the zoning board, hopefully this evening for the last time. And we're excited to be involved in the building of these homes. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Reverend. All right. Any other public commentary before we'll let Mr. Mullen have one last word, and then we'll move into our deliberations and to vote for perhaps the last time on this application. All right. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Mr. Mullen, is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion before we move to executive session?
I think we've already said most of it. At the beginning, we made a promise, right? We made a promise that we would marry our good intentions with good engineering and good planning. I think that the testimony tonight evidenced that fact, that there's an effort to be sensitive to the community's needs and to the development of the values of Summit in terms of providing in an affirmative way for this affordable housing. This is not a situation where it's just one or two affordable housing units. There are 12 affordable housing units. And so this represents a major commitment of all the town's players, whether they be the professionals within the town council and their agencies, whether it means this particular board and all the other people that make this work. I think that you've heard enough in terms of testimony about the notion of positive factors as it relates to this particular development and the absence really of negative factors. Clearly, there are obligations on the part of the applicant to secure variance relief. But we're lucky in many ways because oftentimes that variance relief is rather limited. I don't in any way downplay the need for variance relief, but in some instances, the relief is necessitated by exceedances or shortfalls, which are really kind of small given the overall project. So we thank you for your attention. We thank you for your consideration, and we thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mullen. So, Mr. Ball, to be clear, there are no new conditions that we're hearing, though much of the testimony we heard this evening, for example, the concession on the bike rack, will be addressed in due form and captured again through testimony. Anything you also want to add about kind of the scope of the vote for this evening before we do move forward with deliberations?
No, I mean, that's accurate. I didn't have any other particular conditions noted. I would just note, again, compliance with the engineer's report, except as discussed during the testimony tonight, is incorporated into, this and any other resolutions that the board has, and just those usual procedural conditions there. As far as the vote goes, again, it is only for modification in accordance with this updated application. The board's prior approval stands in place, so the board is only considering those additional modifications presented tonight.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Ball. Who would like to have the pleasure of beginning the deliberations? Mr. Yuko?
Yeah, I'll start. Mostly because I was the only no vote on the when we approved the application last time, and really the only reason I voted against it because I love the idea of having affordable housing. It's obviously very much inherently beneficial. It's something Summit needs. I just couldn't get past the negative impact of the opening the property out onto Ashwood Court. And I'm so happy that we're back here with using the existing driveway going out to Morris Avenue. Like I said, I think it's a major, major step for Summit. So many units at one time getting approved, affordable housing units. So I'm enthusiastically in favor. Thank you so much for getting us here, all of you involved.
Any other board members like to chime in?
Oh, sure.
Okay, go, Mr.
Yes. I'm excited that I get to support this as well without having sat through the 6 prior hearings. I feel like I'm here just for the icing on the cake. But, everything Tom has said about the inherent good of affordable housing, and I'm certainly happy to see members of the clergy, who I'm guessing are the Summit Interfaith Council, supporting this. I think it's a win-win, and I'm in favor of it.
All right. Any other board members like to add before we move to voting? All right, no need to belabor the point. There's a lot of good in this amended application. The additional parking stands out, the access to Morris Avenue, and the confirmation of a number of the technical issues, drainage, lighting, that we had addressed ad nauseum through the other 6 hearings. So I too can join Ms. Newell and Mr. Yuko and Claire with my support for the application. So do we have a motion to approve this amended application?
I'll move to approve.
Mr. Yuko, a second?
Second.
Ms. Newell, Chris, you give us a roll call?
Sure. Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Black, Mr. Malay,
Yeah.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Ms. Sager,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes. All right. Congratulations, Habitat. And board members, hang in here. We have to approve the resolution as well this evening. So, all right. With that, though, I don't think there's anything else on the agenda for this evening, just the approval of the resolution. So I discussed this with Mr. Ball. It's not typical, but it's certainly permissible that in this same hearing, we will approve the resolution related to 146 Morris Avenue, for which you've seen a draft copy. So first, any questions before we do proceed to consider that resolution?
Yeah, just for the record, I just want to hear Mr. Ball say, is there anything that came up tonight that we need to change in the resolution, or is what you sent out still good?
I didn't see the need for any revisions. I think it's already been addressed. It's already been imposed through testimony and incorporated in the prior conditions in the previous resolutions. So unless any board members feel the need for any amendments, I think we are good to go with a vote on the prior draft.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Chris, will you give us, this is a roll call as well, I believe.
Yeah, we need a motion to, and a second to approve the resolution as well.
All right.
So moved.
Move. Second.
Oh, motion to Mr. Yuko, second to Claire. Getting quicker, Claire. And a roll call now. Okay, Chris.
Mr. O'Manul,
Need button.
Yes.
Mr. Yuka,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay, Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Ms. Sager,
Yes.
Chairman Spur.
Yes. All right. Now, truly congratulations, Habitat. We'll get that signed for you and out into circulation. All right. Chris,
Thank
any other
you very
business for
much.
us this evening? You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mullen.
This is the only thing on the agenda for tonight, so.
Okay. All right, thank you,
I hate to do this. I have one question because at Common Council last night, they announced they were going back to in-person for the first meeting in May. So I didn't know when we might follow.
Chris and I punted that over to Chris a question earlier today. So we're going to huddle up on that on Friday and let the board know when they have to get back out their dry cleaning and head back into chambers. So we'll let you know as board members as soon as possible. And of course, notice the public accordingly. All right. With that, we are adjourned for the evening. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you all again very soon.